Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Normally we do this on Thursdays, as you know. Peter Greenberg here, but yesterday I was actually doing a shoot in Bermuda for one of our shows, a little pre-production trip. So thank you for bearing with me, and we're doing it today on Friday. We'll be back on schedule next week, but for today, you got me on Friday. And it's good that it's Friday because there's so much more news to talk about. In fact, too much news to talk about. It's crazy. It's mask time. Thanks to the CDC announcement of it's going to create tremendous excitement, elation, and confusion and chaos while we're at it. And we'll talk about that. It's one thing to have CDC announcement. It's another thing to have CDC guidance. And the problem is there's not a lot of guidance right now. People are not understanding what the announcement really means, what the rules are. They certainly don't understand how to enforce it or how to challenge it. And does this mean I can wear my mask or not wear my mask to go to the grocery store as well as to the park? I'm expecting fights to break out at any moment as people get challenged or people are uncomfortable. And so my prediction is going to be, this is not going to be a government decision anymore. It's going to be led by the private sector. Remember, no shirt, no shoes, no service. How about this? No shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service in many private establishments because so many people are going to be uncomfortable, at least in the short term. In the long term, as the vaccination numbers go higher, we may not even be able to have this conversation, and that'll be very thankful on my part as well. But there are so many different parameters here that are just evolving that we don't even know about yet. Look, we all want to breathe. I hate my mask. I mean, I hate wearing my mask because it fogs up my glasses. I can't see anything. That's for starters. But I understand why I wear the mask. And now, if I've been given freedom to not wear the mask because I've been vaccinated or you've been vaccinated, I get that. But how do I prove it on the street if somebody wants to know? I mean, it's going to get a little crazy for a while. So stay tuned on that. Plus, there's another issue. As the European Union countries are starting to open up, right? Greece opens tomorrow. Italy opens today. Spain opens on the 20th. France is beginning to open. Iceland's already opening. We can go down that list later on. They're not relaxing the mask rules because their level of vaccinations, in most cases, is nowhere near what ours is. And as a result, those mask rules are going to stay for a while. So this is a BYOM time. You better bring your own mask because if you're going overseas, there's a reasonably good chance you're going to have to wear it. The cruise lines, the CDC initial guidance, here we go with guidance on the cruise lines, is that, yes, you could go on the cruise ship. They wanted 95% of passengers fully vaccinated. Why was the other 5% left open? For kids. But for those passengers who are on the ship, the original guidance was, and by the way, the original guidance was 4 days ago, or as recently as 4 days ago, that you had to wear your mask to do everything short of going to the bathroom. I mean, everything. And now they're beginning to relax that a little bit. So we're going to start to see, some walls come down, some domino effect all over the place. And we'll be watching that very carefully. And you might have noticed when we talked about this last week, I fully expected that when the EU said they were going to open up, that the United Kingdom would also open up on that red, yellow, green light system, where American vaccinated passengers would be in the green light, which would mean you could go to the United Kingdom without having to quarantine. Well, they issued that red, yellow, and green light system, but they didn't put Americans on it. That was a big surprise. And the U.S. travel industry is like knocking down hard on the Brits. And there's a little reciprocal battle going on. And isn't it interesting that the U.S. State Department, remember them, with the level 4 do not travel advisories that covered 80% of the globe, they decided, well, let's give them a little bit of an olive branch. So they took that level 4 to the United Kingdom and they dropped it to a level 3 as sort of an indication of like, work with us. You know what level 3 means? Reconsider travel. We're still not going. I mean, people are just still scared. So, but my prediction, even last week, I'm going to continue it this week, and I don't think I'm going to be wrong. By June 15th, the United Kingdom will be open. They will not be able to stand alone and suffer another summer without any revenue. We are quickly moving from a public health issue to an economic issue. And economics always, in the end, it wins. So stay tuned on that. We're going to see more and more countries. Tahiti and all the French, all the French former colonies are now open. France will be right behind. So get ready, get out your bucket list. It's time to plan. And the ironic thing about it is that since there's no business travel and certainly no long-haul international business travel, in many cases, the business class fares to Europe right now are less than what the coach fares used to be. Now, that's not the same in this country, but it is on many overseas flights, so check it out. All right, let me remind you that our website is petergreenberg.com. Our radio show, which is going to air every Saturday right on time at between 10 and 1 p.m. Eastern time. Check your local listings. Eye on Travel on CBS. If you can't get to the show or you can't find the show, go right to that website, petergreenberg.com, hit the radio icon, and we stream it live about 5 minutes after the hour, after all the local stations do their news and traffic. So now you know about that. And of course, our photo of the week, I'll get to that in a little bit. We got some really great entries this week. And of course, we have a winner. I will announce that as well. And we'll get to your questions. But we have more to talk about. This comes from the really department, the latest Harris poll. 77% of Americans say they have summer plans to travel. Duh. We had summer plans to travel 2 years ago. Now they're just going to put them into play. So that's happening, right? And they're going. The bookings are high, and it's getting crazy. It's getting crazy in all the new airline routes that have been announced. It's getting crazy because there's going to be an interesting dynamic, and I want to warn you about this. If you're flooding the zone with hundreds of thousands of airline seats a month, that presumes in a normally intelligent environment that there are hundreds of thousands of rooms available when you get there. Well, that ain't the case in Bozeman, Montana, right? Every airline that's announced a new route this summer has also picked Bozeman, and they're flooding the zone with 200,000 seats a month to Bozeman. There are not 200,000 rooms in Bozeman. There are not even 20,000 rooms in Bozeman. It's going to be very inexpensive to get there because I doubt seriously that the airlines are going to fill 200,000 seats a month, so the fares will stay low, but it may be very expensive to be there. So don't say I didn't warn you. But there are a lot of other locations that you can pick that won't have that problem. They will still be inexpensive to get to and inexpensive or relatively inexpensive to be in. We'll have more of that on our website, petergreenberg.com. However, there's all sorts of other stuff happening. The airlines are reverting to old bad habits, right? Remember the home of the brave and the land of the fee? Well, we're still having it. American putting bag sizers at gates and charging you to check bags. A lot of other fees starting to show up with other names, but by any other name, the same bad fee. Hotels, they're throwing back in those resort fees. They don't get it. There are 2 lawsuits right now filed by attorneys general. These are in state courts against major hotel chains for all sorts of reasons, the least of which, is failure to disclose, saying that the resort fees are, basically fraudulent pricing. And they call it drip pricing. They're charging resort fees and even city hotels now. They're doing everything they can to raise revenue. I understand their need for revenue. Please don't just be competitive on rate. Be competitive on honesty. If you're going to charge me a resort fee, make it part of the regular rate. Don't get my attention with a low room rate, and then I find out later I'm ka-chinging for $50 a night. It does not fly, and it doesn't work well. Those court cases are going to be coming to trial in the next 3 or 4 months. We will be on top of that. In addition, what's interesting is the big bad R word, right? Refunds. It's back in the news again. Earlier this week, two U.S. senators, Ed Markey from Massachusetts and Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, wrote letters to every airline CEO saying, guys, this is Skyway robbery. You're holding, fasten your seatbelts, $10 billion in vouchers that you gave to passengers instead of giving back their money. And many of those vouchers have expired because here's the catch. Even pre-pandemic, if an airline gave you a voucher for whatever reason, it had a 1-year validity in most cases. But the ticking clock for that 1-year validity started based on when you bought the original ticket, not when you were supposed to fly. So if you bought a ticket 5 months in advance, a lot of people did for summer, and then you got a voucher, the validity on that voucher may have only been 6 months, which was in the middle of the pandemic anyway, you still couldn't use it. That's not right. It's not fair. It's not ethical. And, it borders on skyway robbery. So both senators have sent these letters. They don't have a lot of weight, except to raise attention. However, both senators co-authored a bill last year. I'll read it to you. Ring a bell. In May of 2020, 1 year ago this month, they called a bill called the Cash Refunds for Coronavirus Cancellations Act of 2020. And what happened to that bill? It never left committee because they didn't have control of the Congress. They didn't have the House. They didn't have the Senate. Well, now they do. So the subtext of their letters to the airline CEOs is, if you don't play nice and do the right thing, we're going to reintroduce that legislation, and this time it's going to pass, and the president's going to sign it. You want to know something? He will. So stay tuned on that one, because it's got a story that's not going to go away anytime soon. $10 billion in refunds. Now, some of the airlines have made extensions on that, some 6 months, some a year, some go through the end of 2022, but that presumes you still can use them. How many people had weddings planned, or had events and family vacations, or they were getting reunions together? Were only going to happen once. They have no need for that ticket anymore. They have no need to go to that city anymore. And what's worse is that the way the airlines structure the vouchers, they're non-transferable. They can only be used by you. Look, if I get a gift certificate at a store, I can give it to you. That's the way it should be here too. And that's part of the letter, or the letters, I should say, that the two senators wrote. By the way, listen to Eye on Travel this Saturday. Both senators will be on the show in an extended interview to discuss this issue and a few other issues in terms of passenger rights. And speaking of passenger rights, let's talk about deregulation. Because back in 1978, when they passed the Airline Deregulation Act, that basically said to every state legislature in the country, you can't regulate the airlines. You can't do it. So there have been so many state legislatures that have tried to pass, New York being one of them, a passenger bill of rights, an airline passenger bill of rights, only to get it thrown out of court because of jurisdiction and the law that they couldn't regulate the airlines. So the only hope here, other than federal legislation, is rulemaking at the Department of Transportation. Remember the Tarmac delay rule? That was a rule. That wasn't legislation. And what it said, it came out because so many airlines were stranding passengers for 3, 4, 5, and 6 hours in the middle of winter on runways that they weren't moving and wouldn't cancel the flight. They were trapped. And the airlines would not allow any legislation. They had a very strong lobby. So the Biden administration's Department of Transportation went to a rulemaking provision, and that came up with the Tarmac delay rule. And the Tarmac delay rule said that if once you push back from the gate, no matter what's happening out there, if you don't take off and you don't return to the gate within 3 hours, then you're liable to a fine of up to $27,500 per passenger per incident. We're talking 7 figures here, guys. And the airline screamed and yelled and said, this is wrong. We can't do it. It's going to cost us millions. Guess what? How many tarmac delays have there been in the last 3 years? 2? And even those cases got mitigated because of other circumstances, but nobody was getting trapped on planes anymore. So look to the DOT under our new Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, to do some interesting rulemaking. And then the one step beyond that, otherwise known as an enforcement action. If they don't get the legislation they want in terms of getting passengers their refunds, I fully expect the DOT in the next 90 days to do an enforcement action, especially since so many U.S. airlines took federal money without any strings attached as it related to refunds. So watch this space. We will talk about that. Cruise lines. There's a battle going on again between the cruise lines in the state of Florida, which does not want to mandate anybody to have a vaccine passport or a requirement of a vaccine. The CEO of Norwegian, Frank Del Rio, basically said, okay, fine, we're taking all of our ships out of Florida. And you want to know something? They can do that. and they might do that. My guess is at the end of the day, the state of Florida caves on this. Again, as I said before, no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? It's the same thing. The private sector is going to lead the way here with individual rules, which will apply at restaurants, which will apply at grocery stores and dry cleaners and movie theaters. There are liability issues here as well that we have to address. They're not going away. So hold on to those masks, because there may be times, more often than you think, you're still going to have to wear them. So now, one disturbing new development I'm going to share with you before we get to your questions. It was one thing when the TSA was seizing a lot of weapons at security checkpoints during the height of the pandemic. It seems sort of counterintuitive since so few passengers were flying, but they seized a lot of them. Well, they've now seized even more. According to the TSA, they seized 120 firearms just in April alone. And the most disturbing factor of all is 80% of them were loaded. Yikes. So acts of rage at the airport just waiting to happen. Stand by as we figure out what's going to go on. The good news is, of course, if there is any good news, that the TSA has bringing in about 6,000 new agents to handle the increased passenger loads that we're all going to see in the weeks and months ahead. That is inevitable. It has look, 1.7 million being screened in a given day right now is not an unusual occurrence. And as we get closer to Memorial Day, it will go higher than that. Speaking of that, everybody getting ready to travel on Memorial Day, good luck finding a rental car. It's not around. It's not going to be around. I priced out the cost of a Kia, a little baby Kia in Miami 2 days ago, just to see what the rate was. The one-day rate from Hertz, $441 a day. And that did not include a mileage cap of only 100 miles. And then they're going to charge you 35 cents a mile above that. It didn't include a drop-off charge if you were taking it out of town. And it didn't include a refueling charge. Some rental car companies, you know what they're charging to refuel your car when you bring it back? Whatever you're going to guess, you're not going to go to the Showcase Showdown. $11 a gallon. So you're talking about a $600 or $700 rental for like 2 days. It's nuts. So my advice to anybody watching, if you got a trip planned this summer of under 500 miles, bring your own car. You'll thank me. All right. Now, let's get to some of your questions. Here comes one from Michelle, who says, even after this nightmare is over, I'd still wear a mask in public transportation. You know what? Well, I'm glad you're volunteering to do that, but guess what? It's a federal mandate. You're going to have to wear a mask on public transportation. Buses, interstate travel, airplanes, airlines, airports. You're going to have to do it. And cruise lines for the moment. Patricia Bradley, loaded, good Lord. You're right. Loaded, good Lord. My words exactly. And Patty Ford says, rent from others. Well, there aren't renting from others right now. It's unless you're going to rent a U-Haul, which they're doing in Hawaii right now, because it's actually cheaper than renting a car. Okay. The rental car prices, Mary Robinson wants to know how long they're going to go on for. Mary, they're going to go on for a while because there are no cars. The rental car companies sold off so much of their fleet to raise capital during the pandemic when those cars were going nowhere and only depreciating in value. Probably till November or December of this year. So get ready for that. Now, the bottom line is there are ways around these things. For example, if you're going to rent a car, if you have to rent a car, then don't rent it at the airport. Even pre-pandemic, rental car rates at the airport were anywhere from 15 to 25% higher than local rental car operations, simply because they got charged such heavy rents from the airport authorities. And you can take a shuttle downtown. It's either free or nominal charge. Rent it down there for a whole lot less. And I don't know of any rental car company that will charge you a drop-off charge to drop it back at the airport in the city where you rented it. So there you have it. When will cruise ships be safe again? Julie Reed wants to know. I think they're safe now. How about that? Think about this. I know you think cruise ships are floating petri dishes. That was the indelible optic that we all saw with the Princess Cruise being, quarantined in Yokohama, and the Holland America ships with people dying, not being able to get to port. But here's the deal. The cruise lines have embarked on a mission, and they have to do this to comply with about 74 different new procedures, design changes, physical changes, infrastructure They've more or less completed that task. And over and above that, there are now the rules that you cannot go on a cruise ship as an officer unless you've been vaccinated. You can't go on one as a crew member unless you've been vaccinated. And you can't go on as a passenger unless you've been vaccinated. With nearly 100% of vaccination compliance on every ship, here's the irony. They're probably the safest places to be if you want to travel right now. Renting a car in France, driving tips. Yeah, it's my same tip as renting a car in Italy. Everybody remember the movie The Gumball Rally? My favorite line in that movie was the guy driving the Ferrari saying to his racing buddy in the right seat, "The first rule of Italian driving, what's behind me is not important." Listen, if I'm going to go through a country where I don't understand the rules, the roads, or the laws, give me a driver who does. Because even if I don't get into an accident, I'll probably cause one. So, do yourself, and then we haven't even dealt with the rates. And dropping it off between countries is usually exorbitant. Okay? All right. Terry Frank Stimulus says, as a part-time Angelino, how to address negative comments about visiting LA that are clearly based on rumor, misinformation, and plain internet stupidity. I got news for you, Terry. It's in every city. It's in every state. The best, and by the way, it has nothing to do with the pandemic. It's been that way all along, right? I remember when I first moved to Los Angeles, I was given quotes like, "There's no there." I was west of the Hudson River, where there was no culture. And everybody said things like, "Wow." Well, you can find people like that in Cleveland. And you can find people like that in, Washington State. It's not the answer. The answer is, as with all travel, physical contact, exchanging conversations, immersing yourself in the culture. And anybody who says, I remember, and I gotta call out my cousin. This goes back many years ago. He was living with me in Los Angeles. He had never been to New York. And I said to him, "Come to New York." He goes, "I hate New York." I said, "Wait a minute, you've never been there." He says, "I don't want to go. I hate it." And I dragged him with an industrial strength spatula all the way to New York. And of course, he changed his mind within about 22 seconds. But guys, you got to get off your ass and go to a place, immerse yourself before you have the right to tell me you don't like it. It really is as simple as that. And it's as important as that. Okay. U.S. travelers visiting Morocco still needs a PCR test, even if vaccinated? You bet. I just came back from Bermuda. I've been vaccinated. I had to show a negative COVID test before I could get to Bermuda. When I landed at the airport, before they let me out of the airport, they did a PCR test, and I was then driven right to my hotel where I had to quarantine until I received the results. Now, once I received the results, free to go anywhere. Had to wear a mask, of course, but I was not quarantined. In order to come back, I had to get tested again to comply with the U.S. rules of the negative COVID-19 test within 72 hours. And it doesn't matter that I was vaccinated. Now, some of these rules will change as vaccination levels increase in different countries, but that's the way it's going to be for now. All right, let's go. Planning to go. Vince says, "I'm planning to go to Croatia and Bosnia Herzegovina. Are there any restrictions crossing between these two countries? I don't know of any, except you're going to have to show a negative COVID-19 test, which you can get anywhere." Okay. Daniel says, "I have a trip to Zambia planned for late August. Am I going?" Daniel, yeah, you're going in your dreams. Africa, sadly, has not gotten their act together, with exceedingly few exceptions. If you take a look at the worldwide vaccination percentages of populations, Africa is about 2%. It's sad. And look at India. They make the vaccines, but they can't vaccinate their own population fast enough. And look what's going on there. So if anybody who's got a trip planned for Africa, with maybe one or two exceptions, maybe Northern Africa, like Egypt, I would strongly suggest you move it back to 2022, based on the numbers that I'm seeing now. Thoughts on COVID safety in the Caribbean from Jennifer. Jennifer, could you be any more general? Give me a country, then I'll give you an answer. Okay. Look, the bottom line here is you got to do everything on a case-by-case basis. And now that the CDC mask announcement has been made, the responsibility falls firmly on you to be situationally aware. Look, I love the idea that I'm being given permission to not wear my mask indoors or outdoors. However, if I show up tomorrow at a bar and there are 700 people there 5 inches away from each other, sweating, spitting, and kissing, I might do a 180. In fact, I will do a 180. And I've already been vaccinated. I just don't like the situation. And this summer, you're going to see it now with the mask announcement. People are going to go nuts because it's all pent up demand. There'll be block parties and all sorts of other stuff. If you've been vaccinated and you can prove it, but how do you do that? Right? So we have a built-in problem here that's not going to be solved anytime soon. So again, it's based on your own individual responsibility now. It's the honor system, if you will, to do the right thing based on your level of vaccination, and then to do the right thing for yourself based on what you're seeing. You can't just let this happen because we're not through this yet. We're just not. All right. What about Peru and Guatemala? Again, high incidence rates there. But these are countries that are on lockdown. Look, Greece is opening tomorrow and they're still on lockdown, right? Turkey's still on lockdown, but it doesn't mean you can't go if you've been vaccinated and you show the negative test. You're going to be okay. You may not be doing the nightlife and breaking plates, which of course is an anachronism these days, but you get the picture. All right. My guy friend, Colleen says, my guy friend just returned from Guatemala and had a fabulous time. I love Guatemala. I hope he was vaccinated. Okay. Scott Cowan says, don't shoot the messenger, but you started reading questions from the bottom. Scott, I figured out the problem from last week. My assistant, Anthony, had nothing to do with it. He's innocent. He's already been basically acquitted. The way this system scrolls, it scrolls so fast that I can't keep up, and there's no way to stop it. So I'm looking at the questions as they come in. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. So I'm not shooting the messenger either. I am the messenger here. That's what's going on. We're planning a trip to an all-inclusive resort in Jamaica this September. What's the latest on how Jamaica is doing? It's doing better. And, they were the first ones one of the first ones in the Caribbean to do the testing. The real key here is to see how the resorts and hotels in individual countries have pivoted to address not what you're talking about, but what you're thinking. And what you're thinking is, I want to go so badly to X, but I don't want to get there and get stuck and not get home. So the resorts, the destinations, and the countries that are anticipating that thinking, which would be correct, and are addressing that in terms of testing for free, in terms of putting you up at their expense if you happen to test positive and getting you back home when you're recovered, those are the ones that are getting visitors because they're giving them a security blanket that's desperately needed. So there you go. Here's one from Colleen. We're heading to France in August for wine harvest, but plan to visit off the beaten path villages. I'm wondering if small towns should be avoided until things open up. Colleen, have you been vaccinated? Then go. If France opens up, it's not about them anymore. It's about you. And if you've been vaccinated, I'll tell you right now, the answer is, unless you have serious pre-existing conditions and your own doctor tells you not to, and I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on Facebook, I would say you'll be okay as long as the country is opening, and the country is opening. Teresa says, if I connect in Brussels en route to France, how is COVID testing managed during a connection in European Union? To my knowledge, if you're literally transiting within 3 or 4 hours, there is no COVID testing. You're in a quote unquote sterile area, like you would be not having to clear customs, and you're disconnecting. And then whenever you get to your destination, that's when whatever testing regimes are in place, that's what you'll be required to do. We're visiting Krakow, Poland. This comes from Sandra in September, not part of the EU. Will we need to quarantine? Well, Poland is still on a lockdown, and it's May. My guess is they'll open up sometime in July or August, but that's getting close to your September trip. We're just going to have to watch that. And Nancy says, I'm vaccinated, by the way. Okay, Nancy. Why say okay to visit France if vaccinated, but not Africa? Because their infrastructure isn't up to anything right now. Most of these places are closed. They're in lockdown. There's a difference between lockdown and closed. There's a difference between a curfew and closed. And that's why I'm saying that, Jim. There are so many. Now, there are 54 countries in Africa. I know I painted with somewhat of a broad brush, but you better call ahead to find out what's literally open. Because if everybody's staying at home, the locals staying at home, then there's no infrastructure for you to immerse in. Okay. Peter Coe says, when am I planning a return visit to beautiful Madison, Wisconsin? Well, that's a rhetorical question because the answer is anytime I can. Those of you who know, I love Madison. I went to school there. I owe my career to that University of Wisconsin experience. I try to get back at least once a year to watch a football game, if nothing else. And last year, our team was pretty hit hard by COVID. We didn't do as well as we could. But in past years, we've had great teams. Although I have to tell you, I've gone to like 4 Rose Bowls that Wisconsin played in the last 12 years, and we've lost every one of them. So maybe the 5th time is the charm. But of course, the way you get to the Rose Bowl is winning games during the season. So I will be back there, hopefully in September, which is the magic month for me anywhere, but especially in Madison, to see the game. Okay. Jim Holden says, all Safari Africa is open, no lockdown. Okay, that may be true, but I have to still think about the infrastructure, and I'm not convinced yet. Thank you, Peter, for that nice note. When do I think Singapore will be open? Singapore, by the way, Singapore to me, I define Singapore the way my mother used to call it, NSOH, no sense of humor. And they're taking this COVID situation extremely seriously. They're doing a mandatory quarantine now if you showed up for 21 days at your expense. Singapore is not leading the way here. You have to wait a little bit while longer, as you will for Thailand and Cambodia and many other spots in Asia. My guess is September, October. Greetings from Uganda. And Crest says, Uganda is open for American and European tourists who are fully vaccinated with less rigid protocols. Okay for Uganda. And for Gorilla Trekking and Game Park Tour, okay, you can do it. There's an answer right now from one of the operators there in Entebbe. And are you in Entebbe or are you in Kampala? You'll let me know, Chris. But bottom line is there's a reason why Winston Churchill called Uganda the Pearl of the Orient, Pearl of Africa, excuse me. Sorry about that. I've had a great time there. And if you ever really want an adventure, you better hold on because they have some river trips that are like class 7s on the river there. So check it out. When will Australia be open to the U.S.? Barbara wants to know. The latest I'm hearing is January of next year. And as Australia goes, my guess is so will New Zealand. Okay. This is Karen wants to know, trying to figure out what testing requirements there are of traveling to Finland, Norway, and Sweden, all in one trip. Once in Finland, it's land travel, not air, just upon entry to Finland or at each border. Right now, I'm hearing each border. That's what's going on. That may change, and by the way, the same thing applies to, you mentioned Norway, especially Norway. Here's one from Emily, which I think I just answered. What are your thoughts in New Zealand opening up and more flight options by late October of this year? Emily, the answer right now, slim and none. Any info about Kenya? Well, of all the countries in Africa that are going to open up to tourism, Kenya will be in front, followed by South Africa, of course, then Botswana, a little bit to a lesser extent Namibia. Zimbabwe is still a mess. Zambia the same. And of course, we have the issue in Tanzania, which has a huge infection rate and has to wait a little bit. Any news on Canada opening? No. Canada keeps kicking the can down the road. It's all about the vaccination levels of their own citizens. They were supposed to announce whether they're going to open the borders, the land borders, on as of May 21st. That's coming up a week from today. There have been no announcements. But you know what? I would not be surprised if they kicked it back to end of June, early July. Angela wants to know, my friend Angelo and Poco from American Express, will we be able to go to the Olympics? Right now, the answer is no. They're holding the Olympics with no spectators. Let's give this some context. Overwhelming 80% public opinion disapproval in Japan of the Olympics. But they're doing them anyway because they don't want to give up the global television rights, which are, gazillions. So the compromise here is hold the Olympics, but no foreign spectators allowed. That's the decision as of about 3 weeks ago. Let's see if it holds. Okay. Scott Cowan wants to know, before you leave, what in the world is behind me? Well, I'm an Asiaphile. For those of you who might know, for many, many years, about 25 years, I also had a house in Bangkok and Thailand, and I collect a lot of stuff from that region. And what you're seeing from behind me are beautiful Buddhist statues, and I have a few of them around the house, and that's what's behind me. And these are the old ones too. And I had to get a special permission from the Minister of Culture there so that I was not raping the cultural heritage of Thailand. And I was approved by the Ministry of Culture to actually to buy these because too many people are smuggling. Okay. Patricia says, I work in the group and incentive hotel business. When do I think the corporate world will start? Well, let's answer that two ways. There's business travel, and then there's meetings and incentives. Business travel has already started. Just people don't want to admit it yet. You're going to see by September business travel coming back at about 50 to 55% of what it was in 2019, because intra-business travel is going to stop for a while. Meaning, if you're the parts department of IBM and you want to talk to the sales department, hey, sit in your underwear and do a Zoom call. But if you are the sales department of IBM and you want to sell me a mainframe, you got to get on a plane and come visit me in person and have that deal. And all you need is one Fortune 500 company sales department saying, enough of this, we're going to go out and meet our clients in person. The other competitors can't be left at the gate. They know the importance and the real value of face-to-face, and they're going to start going. The ironic thing is right now, there are about 20 of those companies doing it right now. They're just not admitting it. But by September, they're all going to be doing it. So get prepared. Now, meetings and incentives, middle to the end of next year. It's just the way it's booked. It's the way they're structured. All right. I understand that Kenya is open. I see that. Eddie May wants to know about an October 20th cruise from London, France, Portugal, Spain. Do I think it's a go? Right now, I do. I really do. And you're both vaccinated, Eddie, so take a shot. But make sure you have a mutually agreeable definition of terms from the cruise line as to what your rights are if the trip is canceled. Do you get your money back, or are we back in voucher land again? Better get it in writing. All right? All right. Any comments on the Alaska Tourism Recovery Act that passed its first step this week? I'm going to withhold judgment on that, Carmen, only because it's got a long way to go before it gets through both houses and gets signed. And then again, it's the turnaround time of how long it's going to take to actually implement that. I understand it. I support it, but it's going to take some time. Here's some from Zach. I have a trip to visit Medellin, Colombia within the next 2 months. Should the protests going on concern me? The protests are basically economic, about raising taxes. They're mostly in Bogota. There have been some demonstrations in Medellin and Cartagena, but they're not violent. At least the way I've seen it, they've not been violent. They're economic based, which means they may be going on for a while. But it wouldn't stop me from going right now. Obviously, you said within the next 2 months. It is a fluid situation. We have to make that decision probably about 2 weeks ahead, and then watch it even then. But again, when they had protests in Hong Kong, remember all that? Didn't stop me from going. I was in Tahrir Square in Egypt during the Arab Spring. It didn't stop me from going there. Right? So again, situational awareness, common sense. 9 out of 10 times you can go. Okay. You asked, do I do great migration trips? Well, I don't organize them, Catherine, but great migration trips are unbelievable. And if you notice the calendar every year, the dates are changing every year. It's going to be a little bit early this year, I think. But unbelievable stuff between Kenya and Tanzania. I mean, game-changing lifetime experience to be able to witness that. And I hope you get a chance to do it. If not this year, then next. Okay. Traveling to UK next week using the US government, the UK government test to release to cut quarantine from 10 days to 5. London, here I come. Jim, my prediction I'm still going to tell you again, by June 15th, there won't be a quarantine if you've been vaccinated. So I think you should keep that in mind. But bottom line is, if you want to play the game with a 5-day quarantine and you're willing to do that at your expense, then do it. By the way, photo of the week. It goes to Pamela Kress, who sent in this photo. We'll post it here, of Sanssouci Palace in Potsdam, Germany. She took the picture in August of 2018 and basically just discovered it. And of course, pictures like that keep her close with a memory, and that's why you take pictures. The beautiful thing about taking pictures when you travel is they don't necessarily have to include you in them, right? It's the selfie mentality that drives me nuts. This is a fine picture, and congratulations to Pamela for doing that. If you've got one to send in, please do it. petergreenberg.com is the way to go. Here are some questions that you emailed me this week. Susie wants to know, can I comment on Turkish Airlines? Any issues? Not really. They still fly to more destinations than any other airline in the world. I fly them all the time. I'm going to be going later next month to Islamabad in Pakistan. And of course, I'll be going through Istanbul on the way because it's the best connection. Now you can go through Doha. You can go through Emirates in Dubai. But I picked Turkish. And of course, the reason is I have so many friends and family in Turkey that it's always a great idea to stop on the way there or on the way back. But Turkish Airlines, they've got a great route network. I was talking about Africa earlier. There are 54 countries in Africa, and I believe Turkish Airlines flies to 44 of them. No other airline can make that claim. Here's one from Evelyn, which asked the same question, Evelyn, that I've been asking. With the new CDC rules, who will check if you have the vaccine? Doesn't matter who's going to check. How are they going to know anyway, right? I mean, I can see incidents happening left and right in every venue you can imagine with a guy saying, I'm not wearing my mask, I'm vaccinated, get away from me. Then what happens? Do you call the vaccine police? I mean, it's going to get a little crazy for a while. Okay, this is a crazy one from Jeannie. My boss made a reservation with Allegiant Air. Within 10 minutes, she canceled the reservation. They charged her credit card. She has tried calling them, chatting, tweeting, sending IMs on Facebook. No luck. I told her to put a stop payment with a credit card. Any suggestions? Well, the one thing you didn't tell me, Jeannie, was when the reservation was made. Was it made 6 months ago or yesterday? Tell me, because that makes the difference. They may have already put in a refund, but it takes maybe 5 to 10 business days to process. So let me know, okay? And if that's not the case, and she didn't take the flight, and she has a record of her canceling, right? And how did she do that? Online or with a person? Did she get the person's first and last name? Always helps. Let me know. Okay. Here's one. I'll be traveling to this is from Missia. I hope I pronounced your name right. I'll be traveling from the US to the UK in June for 6 weeks. That's coming up. Would I recommend getting travel insurance? We can talk about that for 2 hours. I have to warn you all, certain things haven't changed since the pandemic and before the pandemic as well. Many of you, if not most of you, make your airline reservations online. I understand it. You can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning in your bathrobe. You don't have to talk to anybody. God forbid you should have a conversation. But get ready for this. You know what I'm about to tell you. You can't complete that online transaction unless you opt in or out of the insurance. And it seems like a good idea, especially if you have a large investment in the travel and it's not a $59 ticket on Southwest. But nowhere there does it tell you what you're covered for other than cancellation insurance. You think it means something. And even worse, nowhere there does it tell you what you're not covered for. My advice, and it's about having a conversation, opt out of the insurance online every single time. Then go to your travel agent or travel advisor, have a conversation with them. They can sell you the insurance. They can get commissioned on it, but at least they can navigate the hieroglyphics of policy language and let you know what you're covered for and what you're not covered for. Because as many of you watching me right now already painfully discovered during the pandemic, when you bought that travel insurance, it was worthless because on page 95 of their website, which none of you ever got to, and by the way, that would include me too. What did they say on it? Oh yeah, we exclude coverage for pandemic. Whoops. So there you have that. Let's go back to some more questions here. All right. Are there any new updates on Poland open up? I think I answered that already. Do I think prices of cruises will go down once cruising resumes? No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. The cruise lines, and sounds like it's counterintuitive, but hear me out. How many people took a cruise in 2019? About 30 million Americans. That's the same number of Americans getting vaccinated every 7.5 days. And the pent-up demand means the cruise lines are selling out every cabin they're putting up for sale. They already have a built-in reservoir of cruise lovers who want to come back and go back on the ships again. So this is not a situation where the cruise lines are going to discount their way out of this problem. What they may offer as an incentive are some onboard credits, some free excursions on shore, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't really see most of those cruise lines offering discounts. Because remember, the really big ships, and many of them have been repositioned to home ports in foreign countries where they can fill them easily, or more easily than they can in the US. And again, by July 15th, if everything goes according to plan now, US ports will be allowed to be either embarkation ports or debarkation ports for cruise lines. So we're not going to get back to normal, but they're selling out. It's been a huge run. It's a seller's market now for the cruise lines that were idled for more than 14 months. All right, let's see some more questions here. Hello from Split in Croatia. I want to come over there and see you guys. We may be coming over to do my television show in Zagreb. So that's not too far away. And there you have it. Now, let me scroll down and let's scroll up to see if I can find things that are not going to get away from me on the screen. I'm going this way. Remember, again, our radio show this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember to go to our website with any questions I haven't answered or you couldn't get done today. That's peter@petergreenberg.com. The website is petergreenberg.com, where you can hit the icon for radio and stream the show live on Saturday if you don't have a station in your market. Diane says, NCL is showing cruises out of Miami in September. Will the CDC changes allow for cruising out of U.S. ports? I'll give you a qualified yes. I think they will. All right, keeping going. From Michael Summer. A question, Michael, I wish I knew the answer to. Do I think South African Airways will fly again and when? I do think they'll fly again, but I think their financial structure will be completely different. It may have to be a government bailout because they're grounded not just because of the pandemic. They're grounded because they were financially in serious trouble before the pandemic, and it was the pandemic that was the tipping point. So I would say, look, I remember when South African Airways was an amazingly good airline, and they have the makings of being one again. They need better management. They need better capitalization. They need a better route network. And in some cases, they need a better fleet. But I'm holding out hope because I've flown them so many times and never had a problem. And we'd love to get them back in the air again. Okay. Jim Holden says that his clients are on safari in South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, all safe and rigorous protocols in place. Go, Jim. I'm all in favor of that. Gail Huber says, we're hoping to take a Panama Canal cruise next January. Have you been, and do you recommend a particular cruise line? I have been. I've been more than once. It's fascinating, but if you can, even if you don't take it on the cruise, give yourself time to take a pretty intense tour of the canal itself, the engineering that went into opening that when they built it, how many thousands of people died from different countries building it, mostly from malaria, by the way, and the engineering that they designed at the turn of the last century, 2 centuries ago, is still working today. And that's in the older canal. We have the new canal open as well. And it's so good to be able to put things in context when you're there and you see the container ships coming by and the freighters and the LNG ships. It dawns on you suddenly what we all awoke to when we had the problem with the ship stuck in the Suez Canal, and that is 80% of what you wear, what you drink, what you eat, what you drive has come through that canal. It's amazing. Don't ever take it for granted. Tina Hager, my buddy Tina Hager, one of the all-time great photographers, writes, when will the UK go amber for the UAE? You ready for this, Tina? When the UAE goes amber for the UK. It's all about reciprocity. And I can't wait for that to happen. And I'd love to come see you when that happens too. Okay, I'm still scrolling here. I'm going through here. I'm manually scrolling, boys and girls. I think we've answered just about everybody. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but we had a lot today. And once again, I'll join you again next Thursday from a very interesting location in the history of the United States. We will do Facebook Live next Thursday at noon Eastern Time from Selma, Alabama. And I'll be there shooting episodes of my television show, The Travel Detective. We'll be doing the radio show from there as well. And I'll join you next Thursday at noon Eastern Time, 11 Central Time from Selma, Alabama. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bring your masks just in case. We're just, this is it's evolving. The rules haven't really been fully explained. And try to be nice to each other. Be polite, because it's a tense situation with people who have been waiting to take off their masks or have been refusing to wear them all along. And just be nice to each other. We deserve that as well. I'll see you next week.